And then they might put on some summer camouflage. They might add leaves and camo netting, etc. So again, that's a SDK 251C, or more commonly just known as a half-track. In Germany, they often call them Hanemags because they were made by many companies, but one of the larger companies that made them was Hanemag. So they just kind of got that name, the same reason we call tissue Kleenex sometimes. All right, so that's from the Second World War. Now we're going to go into some really big main battle tanks to finish up our show here. We've looked at a lot of little stuff, some very interesting winter stuff, some things from the Second World War, and now we're going to look at some Cold War main battle tanks that you're still seeing on battlefields, unfortunately, around the world today. So we saw the Soviet Second World War T-34-85. Actually, the crew's still over in the corner working on it. This is the first post-war main battle tank of the Soviet Union. And this vehicle is considered one of the first actual main battle tanks. During the Second World War, you can see in the museum there was light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks, tank destroyers. By the end of the war, they were trying to develop a vehicle that could fulfill most roles of a tank. And they're coming up with a concept of the main battle tank. Some would argue that the first MBT was actually the Panther, the German Panther tank, which was a heavy tank. We see it with the Centurion. The British tank that came out right after the Second World War. But the Soviets had learned a lot of lessons from that conflict. And they developed, from the T-34 and other vehicles, they developed the T-54. And that's what you see here. And more of these tanks were built than any other tank in the world. Estimates are that over 80,000 of these T-54s were built by the Soviet Union or their allies under contract. The Chinese developed their own version of it. The Soviet Union gave them the plans and they came up with the T-59. And this vehicle, they were building these up into the 1960s, and once again, they gave them to their client states, they sold them to their allies, and the Soviet Union maintained the largest tank fleet in Europe. Until the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. And the vast majority of that fleet were these T-54s. So it has a full turret. You can see that it has extra fuel drums on the back. The crew commander up there actually has a mount for a machine gun, a Dishka machine gun, which is very similar to a 50 caliber machine gun. This particular variant has a 90 millimeter main weapon. And here in the West, in Canada and our allies, we were very afraid of this tank. Not just because of the capabilities and its technology, but because there was 8 of these for every one of ours. So imagine that. Even if we had a more capable tank, the Soviet Union had 8 of these to face one of ours. Very low profile also, not a lot of room inside for the crew. Also notice, just like its Second World War grandfather, notice how wide the track is for winter and muddy conditions. So you see the main weapon here, and you also see that slot just beside the main weapon. That's for a machine gun, what they call a coaxial machine gun. So the crew inside doesn't always have to fire the main gun. If it's a truck or they're just trying to get range or soften up a target, they can, wherever they're aiming the main gun, they also have a machine gun that can fire, the coaxial machine gun. And then of course the commander on top, and his cupola can turn all the way around, and he has a machine gun to provide provide anti-aircraft fire, but also to provide infantry support on the vehicle. The very, very early versions of the T-54, there's a little hole on the front glacis plate there. When you see it come around, you look for that little hole. That's not a damage to the vehicle. The first versions actually had a machine gun right at the front there that the driver could operate. So the driver could just spray the front of the tank with machine gun bullets. That was later removed because that hole actually weakens the front of the armor. And in the early days when this tank was out, that was very dangerous to NATO and Allied soldiers because people weren't expecting a machine gun to be firing from that front glacis plate. It has additional fuel tanks on the side. You see it also has its towing rig and extra track, and was developed to serve in any condition. These vehicles are currently serving mostly in second and third world countries, in Africa, in the Middle East, and throughout Asia. So let's hear it for Chris, Malcolm, and the team of the T-54. Thanks, guys. So in the world of armored vehicles and tanks, that is one of the more iconic vehicles because you know, it's been around so long and we still see it on battlefields. Now we're going to look at what did the Allies have? What did the Allies, the Western Allies, our allies, and Canada, what did we develop, purchase, and use up against this threat? As I said, you could have a better tank. They had more tanks. But I'm going to show you, which was one of the most successful MBTs ever produced. And Canada purchased these vehicles and used these vehicles. 14 NATO nations still have them in their stocks, just in case as backups. And Canada is now using the newest version of this tank. I'm going to introduce you to the Leopard 1 MBT. This was actually a German design. So yes, the Germans, they lost the Second World War, but they just had so many incredible designs for tanks. When we look at the Panther tank and the Tiger II near the end of the war, this is the son of those Second World War tanks. The German designers, including Force, when they were asked, when Western Germany was part of NATO, and part of the Western Alliance, was asked to develop a new tank for the West, they came out with the Leopard 1. And think about the name. Just like going back to the Tiger and the Panther, it's the name of a cat, a German main battle tank. So it is the son of those Second World War tanks and incorporates all the lessons that were learned in armor and inmate battle tanks from World War II and into the Cold War. What we're looking at here actually served in the Belgian army. This is a Leopard 1A5BE, and our museum has two of these. And although the Leopard 1 has been outclassed by the Leopard 2 and other developments in armor, the reason that it's still seeing service is it's a very reliable tank. It's also considered one of the fastest MBTs ever built. Our operators are actually taking a little easy right now because of the mud and the snow conditions. But this tank on a highway can get up to a pretty high speed. Now, some of the incredible things that that they designed on this tank. So, for instance, for winter, if you look at the track when it's coming around, there's all these little rubber blocks. And those are track pads for going on the roads in Europe. Now, if you're in winter conditions, you can actually knock out the rubber track pads, and on the front glacis, you can see there, winter snow cleats. When it comes around you, you'll see all those X's. So you can take out the rubber track pads, you can put in the snow cleats in different locations, and now your tank has that traction to get through ice and snow. So that was an amazing advancement for this particular vehicle. It was copied on many vehicles around the world. Another great thing that the Leopard 1 had that was different from other main battle tanks is it had a single powertrain pack that they could change in the field in 30 minutes. You have an engine problem, you have a transmission problem, it's not opening the hood and finding that component. They would come along, pull out the entire engine pack, and we've done that a few times here at the museum, put in a new one, and within a half hour your tank is back on the battlefield. Incredibly fast, 105 millimeter main weapon, and also the box just above the gun there, you see that? Had very advanced range, night fighting capabilities, laser range finders, and advanced stabilization technology. So imagine moving around the terrain, this tank can lock onto a target, and no matter where the tank goes, up and down, the technology will keep that gun on that target. So it's amazing advancements that came from after the Second World War. Well, the driver's coming out to say hi. So we have 5 Leopard 1 MBTs here at the museum. You can see some when you go back in the MBCC. We have the Canadian Leopard C1, the Canadian Leopard C2, and a number of these 1A5s. So let's see it go around again. When it comes around, look for those snow cleats on the front, and you can imagine how hard the job is for the crew to get out, bash off those rubber track pads, bash in those steel ones, but that would give it the ability to get through snow and ice and give it some traction on the field. All right, let's hear it for the Leopard team. The reason the driver is hatched down in the Leopard, as you see, they're operating the turret. They're doing some turret offs to show you how it works. And it's very close to the driver's head. So a well-trained driver has to be able to drive by those periscopes and just listening to the radio of the crew commander. Notice that the crew of the Leopard does have the radio headsets on, so they're speaking directly to the driver about where he's going, where he should turn, etc. So that is the last MBT of winter warfare. Now I'm going to be quiet and step to the side. We're going to do another parade lap. So all the vehicles you saw today, all the vehicles you learned about, you'll get to see them one more time in a large parade, and you won't have to worry about me trying to educate you in front of them. You can get some good pictures. After that, once again, the museum's going to remain open until 4 o'clock. Across the field there, that big green building, that's the historic 420 wing. It was a building that was built here 1942 during the Second World War, when this airport was actually a Commonwealth air training base for training pilots for the Second World War. And they welcome you to stop in, have a look at that. They have some great historical displays. They're putting on a barbecue if you're hungry, and it's also fully licensed, by the way. So make sure you check out the 420 wing if you're hungry or need a drink after the show. All right, we're going to start the parade. My name was Jeremy. I'm the executive director. Thank you so much for coming out to Winter Warfare, supporting the museum, supporting the volunteers. And if you liked it, this is Tank Saturday Light. Thank goodness for the good weather. If you really like this, grab a Tank Saturday poster. We hope to see you back here on the field this summer for some really big shows and some really awesome action. Thank you again.